So let's begin with a little meditation. Relax your mind and body and try to set a special motivation. And to do that, first of all, it's worthwhile, as we always do, to try to calm the mind, just watching the breathing, and then watching the mind itself. As you're watching the breathing, try to let go sequentially of your attention to outer objects, and then even your distraction to inner objects of the mind. Just watch the breathing. Just be the breathing. Bring your attention to your mental consciousness. In the same way, all of the objects that appear to your senses, the sounds, the sights, the tactile sensations, and so forth, all are apprehended by the mental consciousness when attention is directed outwards. Now direct your attention inwards, like withdrawing the limbs of a tortoise turtle inside the shell, and just watch the exclusive objects of the mental consciousness. Let go of the holding to the individual objects and try to perceive, in so doing, what's left, just the spaciousness of the mind. Within which these thoughts are arising. The clear light nature of the mind, like a vast, clear space, clear ocean, clear body of water. The spaciousness of the mind has no particular color. It's something that is conceptually understood, first of all. The absence of obstruction to thought. Let go of the sense of your body, the sense of your ego. The mind just knowing itself, just knowing the previous moment of mind. Think the continuum of this mind, our conventional Buddha nature. In other existences, in other lifetimes in the past, has been close to, intimate with every living being at one time or another. Every living being who has a similar kind of mind to us has been our mother, most kind, dear friends. Numberless times they've been depthlessly kind. And like ourself, seemingly isolated, wishing to find happiness. They're enmeshed in cyclic existence. Only recognizing the apparent differences now, sometimes as friends, sometimes temporarily as enemies or as strangers. We categorize them in different ways, but they're all the same and equally being at different times friend, enemy, and stranger, equally the same and being suitable to be objects of our love, our affection, and our compassion. To really bring about their welfare, it's not enough just to become knowledgeable of the ways of the world now, to show them different trades or tricks. It's not enough to become wealthy, to offer that which might satisfy their needs. It's not enough to become a worldly physician to overcome their illnesses or attempt to. So all of these things will change, all of those situations. We could never repay their kindness, never really extricate them from suffering. We ourselves must become enlightened, overcome our faults, which are not inherent, definitely can be overcome, develop our good qualities, to know the path, to lead sentient beings, we ourselves have to tread that path. We ourselves have to become enlightened. To do that, we have to understand well the path taught by the Buddha, not just in its most brief and concise form, but as we have the time and space in our mind to understand the details of what Buddha presented. So for that purpose, I'm going to participate in the class this morning and this course of study to hear the Buddha's teachings, to contemplate them, to meditate on them, in order to understand emptiness, to enhance my good heart thereby, to understand the benefits of virtuous karma, the defects of negative karma, and so forth. To become a bodhisattva, to tread the bodhisattva's path and to become enlightened for the sake of all living beings. And relax. Bring your attention back to the present. Hey. So, is it okay? Oh, okay. It's a big glass of water. Lukewarm water. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is filtered. So how's everyone? Good? Any questions from what we have done so far? Venerable Sophia, do you have any questions? No? Okay. Pat, this question.
Go over the single phenomenon. That again.
Mm-hmm. Did we actually get to single? I think we got to...
We did stop.
Okay. Okay. It's a good sign you're reading ahead. Okay.
I think we stopped.
Okay. How about what we've talked about before? We've basically we're talking about tenets, and as in Tibetan we say drupta, sometimes translated as established ends or established demarcation. Setting off the boundaries of what various phenomena are and so forth. Basically, our text is divided up into these 7 sections. For each of the 4 schools, there's 7 different sections. So we've begun the Sotrantika section. And who knows, what's the definition, Leo, what's the definition of a Sotrantika tenet holder? Can you pull that out? Not without cheating. How about just trying? What would it? See if you can dredge up certain.
He's a Hinayonist.
It has to be a he.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll start over. That person, of whatever gender, is a Hinayonist.
Well, make up your own definition. See how close you could come. What would be the definition if you were trying to explain to someone the propounder of Sautrantika tenets, Sotrantika?
I'm at a total loss right
Okay.
now. I'm sorry.
Carrie, could you? Yeah. See it? I bet you have the definition of the.
No, it's just kind of all floating together, but what stands out is that this Hinayanist is a propounder of the existence of all phenomena, and
The existence, someone who propounds the existence of all phenomena. Does that sound right?
through
How is it
knowing
now?
its function.
Okay, now Diana's going to just see if she can
Yeah.
find some subtle fault in that.
I'm sure she
Instead of all
can.
phenomena, I think it's just external phenomena, the existence of external phenomena.
They propound the existence of external phenomena. That's one thing. Why is it? I mean, doesn't everyone accept the existence of external phenomena? No, who doesn't? Chittamatra. Why is it mentioned even here, though? Well, let's see what this is. The definition of a Sautrantika is a person, Venerable Sangha translated one, I think the text is Kangsak, person, who propounds Hinayana tenets, first of all. That would be enough, I mean, that would get you some credit if you were asked, right? You say someone who propounds Hinayana tenets. Is it enough to say a Hinayana practitioner? Actually, there's a difference between someone who holds tenets and someone who is a practitioner, because someone could be a Mahayana practitioner but be holding Hinayana tenets. So it's not enough to say a Hinayana practitioner. Do you follow what I mean? Probably there are people today who hold to the Theravada tenets, but actually practicing a lot about good heart and maybe even not even studying the classical Theravada teachings, Hinayana teachings, have kind of a mishmash of teachings. They listen to the Dalai Lama and others. They might be actually Mahayana practitioners in a certain way, but they would, if they were forced, they might say that they're a Theravadan. I'm a Theravadist or Theravadan. I hold Theravada tenets. So Sotrantika here, we're talking about someone who's holding these tenets, philosophical tenets, is someone who, first of all, who propounds or expounds Hinayana tenets and accepts both self-cognizers and external objects. Actually, what if I just said it's someone who propounded Hinayana tenets and accepted self-cognizers? That probably would be enough right there, right? Pardon? Self-cognizer is self-knower. That's another way of translating self-knower. Rangrik. So we haven't mentioned what that is yet, but those of you who studied Lorik before know. Do you know what Rangrik is? Self-knower, yeah?
Oh, a self-knower?
Yeah, self-cognizer.
Direct perceiver?
Self-knower. Carrie, do you know what a self-knower is?
I thought it was the direct perceiver as well.
So
But from
all
the-
direct perceivers are self-knowers?
No, a direct perceiver, I'm assuming is one who, or a self-knower is one who had the direct perception of their own volition, their own basis, instead of the through inferential experience.
Oh, I don't know what that means. Sister Oma.
No,
Okay,
it's just right there, but it's not quite coming
Okay.
through. I know that it's.
So this is something we have to review.
Vaibhashika.
Something we have to review. Actually, you probably know. If you were to divide up direct perceivers, that's one of the divisions. That's probably what Sister Thea is thinking about. It's one of the divisions of direct perceivers. But to define, you could say, if you were to define a self-knower, I don't know if you'd start out by saying it's a direct perceiver. It's a knower that is perceiving just the cognizing activity of the consciousness with which it's a part. We'll see the definition here in a while. Remember, according to the Sotrantikas, any consciousness has two ways of knowing. It knows outer things, other objects other than itself, And it has a faculty of just being aware of its own knowingness. Let's say, if I'm knowing the yellow color of this little patch up here, with my eye consciousness, that aspect, that part of the eye consciousness is we call an other knower. Shenrik. Shen means other. But also part of that consciousness, the same entity as that consciousness, but a different part of it, so to speak, is knowing that the consciousness is perceiving the yellow. It's not, it can't, that part of the eye consciousness allows me later to recall that I was seeing. The part of the consciousness that is knowing the other object can recall that I saw yellow, can recall the yellow color. So there's something called Rangrik. So the Sautrantikas accept that. The Vaibhashikas do not accept self-knowing cognition. The Chittamatras do accept in general. There's some schools of Chittamatra who don't, but Chittamatras in general accept self-knower. There are some, even some Svatantrikas who accept self-knowers. But the Prasangika, there are no Prasangikas, the consequentialist school, that accept self-knowing. So again, I always think there's some kind of similarity between the lowest Vaibhashika school and the Prasangika. They have some interesting similarities like that. So a Sotrantika is a propounder of Hinayana tenets who accepts self-cognizers and external objects. Maybe the Chittamatrans don't accept external objects as different entities from the mind. So then there are the divisions. We said there were two divisions of the Sautrantikas, those that follow scripture and those that follow reasoning. Did we have, we didn't have those divisions for the Vaibhashikas, did we? We had like 3 divisions or 18 divisions for the Vaibhashikas, right? So there are, the followers of scripture are those who are following the presentation of the Sautrantika as it's explained in the Abhidharma Kosha. Basically, the Abhidharma Kosha self-commentary by Vasubandhu, because it's there that he's kind of explaining. Because if you just read the root verses of the Abhidharma Kosha, it's mainly talking about mainly talking about the Vaibhashika, right? Do you remember that, Abhidharma Kosha? There's some indication in some of the lines that it says, so they say. Remember this? So if you read the commentary to that Vasubandhu wrote, it's called the Abhidharma Kosha Bhasham. Bhasham means auto-commentary, self-commentary. Tibetan we say Rangdrel. There, I guess those would be the followers of scripture that's explaining the Sautrantika tenets, because obviously the Vaibhashikas also follow the Abhidharma Kosha, but they think it's just the Karikas, for the most part, the root verses. They think it's a very good compendium of their tenets. They're the followers of reasoning also, and those are the ones who follow the 7 texts that were on reasoning composed by Dharmakirti. So you can find a list of those if you have this book, Cutting Through Appearances. You can find a list of those in the end of the book under the section of Dignaga, I think on Dharmakirti, on page 339 and 340. So basically there's 3 main texts that Dharmakirti wrote. The Pramanavartika, which is his commentary, is often translated as a commentary to the Pramana Samuchaya, which was composed by Dignaga. Dignaga himself, the guru, historical guru of Dharmakirti, the 2 of them that are considered to be sort of the founders of, the trailblazers of Buddhist logic. Dignaga came first, and his great work was called the Pramana Samuchaya, the compendium of valid cognition, compendium of ways of knowing. Remember this word samuchaya, like we had Abhidharma Samuchaya. And Dharmakirti wrote a text which was a commentary to that, which is his most famous text, called the Pramana Vartika. That's the text when in the Geshe studies, in the monasteries, when the monks study pramana. That's one of the 5 subjects that they study. Mainly they're studying the Pramana Vartika over like all of their years of study. There's a certain month in the year when they go and they debate with the monks of the other colleges, at least in the Gelugpa tradition, and they would study the Pramana Vartika every year. So that is you can actually find a nice translation of the 2nd chapter of that in, I think it's a text called Is Enlightenment Possible? I've got a copy if anyone wants to take a look at that. And that's a famous chapter in which, the 2nd chapter is in which Dharmakirti establishes the Buddha as a valid person and expounds on some of the verses of Dignaga in his Pramana Samuchaya. But the 1st chapter is talking about the various conditions that are necessary for a syllogism, for a logical statement, for a correct reason, and so forth. So it has different chapters talking about different things. Some of the chapters talk about valid cognition, about the ways of knowing, and so forth. So that's one of the 7 texts, the Pramana Vartika. Another one is the, I'll put on my glasses so I can read the title. The Pramana Vinishaya, I guess. I didn't write down the same thing. The ascertainment of valid cognition. And another one is called the drop of reasoning, Naya Bindu Prakarana. Naya Bindu. Bindu, you know, means drop, right? You've heard that word when in Tantra when they talk about the bindus, the drops, right? Nyaya means logic. My good friend Dr. Karan Singh lives on Nyaya Marg in Delhi, or used to live in New Delhi. Logic, reasoning Marg, reasoning Avenue. And then there are 4 branch texts of those 7. So there's another one that's sometimes translated drop of reasons, Hetu Bindu. Hetu, you know what Hetu means in Sanskrit? Do you know that word? You've heard that? What? In the verse, in the so-called verse of dependent horizon, Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Teshan. That's actually, you know what that verse arises from? That's when we do the blessing of the speech, or in various sadhanas, when you call upon dependent arising. You know that verse? Do you know that, Darjana?
I don't know if I have, but I remember.
You don't say it every day. Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Teshan Shayon Niroda Evam Vadi Mahashramanaya Svaha. So it's actually supposedly when Shariputra and Mahamoggallana, I believe it was they who met a disciple of the Buddha before they became disciples themselves. Pretty sure it was them. And they asked him, whoa, you look so, you're really, how would you say it in Santa Cruz? Hey man,
Cool guy.
you're a cool guy. You look really spaced out, or, you're really calm. What's the story? Who's your teacher? Can you tell us something about the teachings that you follow? And he said, I can't. You'd have to ask my teacher, the Buddha, the enlightened one. And they said, well, can you say something? And he said this verse that Dharma Hetu, all phenomena have causes, and that the Buddha explained all of the causes and the cessation of the causes. Nirodha means cessation, like when we talk about the truth of cessation, nirodha. Also, there's a famous verse in the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali that the Hindus use. You know, the verse about, what is it, about what yoga is. Do you know that verse? That talks about chitta. What is it? I can't remember. The yoga is the cessation of the distortions of the mind, sort of mental, we would say conceptualization. So hetu doesn't only mean cause, it often means cause, but sometimes means reason. So here, when hetu bindu is the name of one of the 7 texts that Dharmakirti wrote. Another one is called the Analysis of Relations, which is the Sambandha Prariksha. You can find these in the name of the back of the text. Another one is the Proof of Other Continuums, Samantha Antara Siddhi Nama Prakarana. Remember Samantha Bhadra? Always going. Samantha kind of means continuing. Antara, like we had, Uttara Tantra. Antara, continuing. So I'm not sure, but I think that may be one of the texts that has to do with, part of it is having to do with the Chittamatra proof that other continuums exist. And then there's another one called Principles of Debate, or Reasoning for Debate, the Vada Nyaya. So anyway, I just mentioned, just for auspiciousness, the names of those. Someday we may have a chance to study Pramadavartaka or some of these others. They're often mentioned, quoted by the great teachers, in Lama Tsongkhapa and his disciples. They studied them extensively. I think Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa that it would be incredibly beneficial for the future if he were to make a detailed study of those texts, even though in a sense they're talking about the Sautrantika and Chittamatra tenets. So actually some of the Chittamatrans actually depend upon these texts also, because Dharmakirti was writing partially from a Sautrantika point of view, partially from a Chittamatra point of view. So those were the divisions. We talked about the divisions of the Sautrantikas, followers of reasoning, followers of scripture. And then there was an etymology, why they're called Sautrantika or Dodepa, because they propound tenets following the sutras. The word Sautrantika comes from the word sutra, followers of sutra. In a sense, remember I mentioned that I think one of the reasons for that is that they say that the 7 texts of Abhidharma that are part of the Vaibhashikas accept as the Abhidharma Pitaka, right? They say that they are not actually words of the Buddha because there are mistakes in there. They were written by, they weren't even written by arhats, they would say, because if they were arhats, they'd know better. They wouldn't have made those mistakes. That the Abhidharma can be found in the sutras themselves. Those statements of Abhidharma can be found in the sutras. The Buddha didn't expound some separate Abhidharma. What about when he went to see his mother during the rainy season up in one of the heavens? Which heaven did he go to, by the way, to see his mother who had passed away? The heaven of 33, which is one of the desire realm, God realms. He didn't go to Tushita. She wasn't born in Tushita heaven. He descended from Tushita. But one of the great holidays that we have in the Buddhist calendar, one of the special karma multiplying days, is when the Buddha descended from the heaven of 33 after having taught his mother during one rainy season. Do you know what he taught her? Mainly he was teaching the Abhidharma. So you might think Abhidharma sounds boring. But so I'm not sure if it said Shariputra or Mahamoggalayana, with their clairvoyance, was listening into those teachings. So supposedly that's maybe the origin of one of the texts. There's one text, one of these 7 Abhidharma texts that were supposedly composed by Shariputra. But the Sautrantikas are followers of Sutra in that sense, that they don't accept the Abhidharma as something separate. And they're also called exemplifiers, Pe Dompa in Tibetan. I don't know the Sanskrit name for that, because they use a lot of examples. They explain phenomena by means of examples, supposedly. Then we talked a little bit last time about the mode of asserting objects, the 4th outline. So, first of all, our text by Trukhi Gelsen begins with the definition of an existent. An existent is that which is realized by valid cognition. And there are 6 synonyms of existent. I don't think does it say here? It doesn't say explicitly here, but we can say this, the following. These are synonyms of existent. Existent itself, which is in Tibetan yopa. You know how to write yopa? Ya naro yo ta yo. Not naropa. Yopa. Yopa. Yo. Ya naro yo ta yo. Okay, that's for those who are studying Tibetan. So you'd say Y-O-D, but you don't pronounce the D at the end. Okay? Yo. Yo means to exist. In Sanskrit, it's sat, this famous word. Sat. Existence. Another synonym of existence is, the definition of existence is, an existent is that which is able to perform, that which is able to be perceived by valid cognition or realized by valid cognition. A synonym of that is phenomena or dharma, the Sanskrit word dharma. You know the Tibetan word for that? Ch, which is cha naro ch sa ch. So dharma has many different many different definitions. I think in a text by Vasubandhu, where he talked about how to write commentaries to the Buddhist texts, very famous texts that he wrote, there are, not only there, but that's one place that's a source for 13 different meanings of the word dharma. Sometimes dharma means teaching, right? Like the holy dharma. Sometimes it means practice, like dharma practices. Sometimes it means phenomena. Here, when we say it's a synonym of existent, we're talking about the meaning of dharma, meaning phenomena. And it is that which is able to uphold its own identity. Because the root of the word dharma comes from a Sanskrit word, I think, dri, which means to hold up. That's why the holy dharma, when we talk about holy dharma, is that which holds us up from suffering. You could understand all of the meanings having some kind of connection with holding up, upholding. The holy dharma is that which upholds us from suffering. How about the worldly dharmas?
Keep us in suffering.
It's what the world thinks holds them from suffering, right? You know, good sensations and fame and pleasure and things like that, possessions, wealth. So here is that which is able to uphold or hold its own identity. That's kind of the meaning of a phenomena, and that's a synonym of existent. Another one, a famous one, is vastu. In Tibetan we say shidup, established base or established basis, we would say in English, and is that which is established or proved to exist by valid cognition. So it's similar to the definition for existent, but a little bit different. Another synonym is a word that you've probably heard before, object of knowledge phrase, sheja, sheparjawa, that which can be known, that which is to be known. In Sanskrit, that's jnaya. Like when we talk about sheja, that which is to, that which is capable of being known. So the definition of that is that known by mind, that which is perceived by mind. Anything which is perceived by mind is an object of knowledge. And another synonym is the word object, a very famous word. In Tibetan we say yul, like you'll go to hell if you don't. No, that's not what I mean. Ya shabju yu la yul. Shabkyu yu la yul. Yul, or in Sanskrit vishaya. Does it have it in the? Are these in the text there? And 223 in this text? Oh, good. I didn't know that. 223. Does it have the definitions?
In the footnotes.
Oh, it gives the names, but doesn't have the definitions. Okay. So an object is that which is able to be perceived by mind. And which one are we leaving out? Shelja. And I don't know the Sanskrit for that. That which is an object of intellectual measurement, that which is measured by the mind. I'm not sure how they translate it otherwise. Shelja, not sheja, shelja. So those are 6 synonyms of.
In English again? The last one.
I'm trying to think of how else it's translated. Shelwa and jelwa in Tibetan means to weigh or to measure. So sometimes it's called object of intellectual measurement, or that which is measured or gauged by the mind. But there's some more soft kind of translation of that, which I don't recall offhand. We'll see. We'll check.
The one here that he translates that which is suitable to be an object of awareness?
I can't hear you.
That's a definition, right?
Well, that's one of the lists. Yeah, definitely. Then he gives
The definition of an object of knowledge is that which is suitable to be an object of awareness. Object existent, object of knowledge, and established base are mutually exclusive. That's just talking. Pardon? Mutually inclusive. Not exclusive. So here it has object. That's the first thing. Definition of an object is that which is suitable to be known by an awareness, right? Then it says the definition of an object of knowledge, that's another synonym, is that which is suitable to be an object of awareness. Then it goes on to say that object, which we've just defined, existent, now there's another synonym, object of knowledge, which we've just defined, and established base are mutually inclusive. So it's just talking about 4 different synonyms. We've added 2 more here. Which 2 did we add? Dharma and object of intellectual measurement, or object that which can be measured by the mind. Okay? So the definition of an existent, which is all of these things, is that which is realized by valid cognition. There are 2 divisions of existence: conventional truths and ultimate truths. So if something exists, it has to be either a conventional truth or an ultimate truth. How about for the higher tenets, for the prasangika? In other words, if something does not exist, does it have to be a conventional truth or an ultimate truth? Or what would you perceive here? If something exists, it has to be a conventional truth or an ultimate truth. What if it doesn't exist, like the horn of a rabbit? Is a horn of a rabbit a conventional truth? It's conceptual. Horn of a rabbit is conceptual. You have to check what, you have to be more precise. This, okay. It's an object conceived by the mind, something that's conceived of by the mind, but some things conceived of the mind do exist and some things do not exist. So it's not existent. What I'm saying, is it a conventional truth or an ultimate truth? What do you think, Mark?
I would say no.
It's neither.
Yeah.
So there's some things that are neither conventional truths or ultimate truths.
That which doesn't exist.
Yeah. So all existence are pervaded by, if something exists, it has to be either a conventional truth or an ultimate truth. So something, when one thing is divided up so that it's either one or another, that's called a what? Dichotomy. So if something is a conventional truth, it's not an ultimate truth for the Sautrantikas. If something is an ultimate truth, it's not a conventional truth. I think in general, for all the schools, they're dichotomies, and they cover all what? All existence, all phenomena that are existent, right? So the definition,
So
Pat.
you're saying it has to be one or the other?
What? If something exists.
If something exists, it has to be either a conventional truth or an ultimate truth.
Yeah. Can you think of something that's not that? Yeah.
For all schools.
I think in general, all of the schools, there's nothing which is both conventional and ultimate truth.
But there are things
What
that
about
can either be.
emptiness?
Okay. What about emptiness?
I mean, it's, it can
Is
be
emptiness?
both
You're talking about
conventional-
like from higher school point of view, from like
Exactly, so.
Madhyamaka or Prasangika point of view. Okay.
all
So is emptiness a conventional truth or an ultimate truth?
It can be
According to
both,
the Sotrantika?
depending on the.
No, I'm talking. Thea's. What?
It can be both depending on the view of, I see those water bowls over there, and they're actually empty of inherent existence. But they do exist
Uh-huh.
on a conventional level.
Right.
But from the view of emptiness, they're just an object in space.
From the view of emptiness, they're nothing.
Exactly.
They're not an object in space.
But yet they
Like we
exist.
said in the Heart Sutra says, in emptiness there is no eye, no ear, no nose. We recited it many times the other night. Remember? So from the point of view of emptiness, it's not like it's an object in space. In the space of emptiness, to the mind that's perceiving emptiness, if you talk about higher tenets, no phenomena no inherently existent phenomena is appearing. So that's why that's an ultimate truth, because it's appearing the way it exists. All other phenomena appear to be truly existent, like the bowl of water, but they are actually empty of that. So you can talk about emptiness, and you can have conceptual understanding of that, and your understanding, in a certain sense, that talking about emptiness in that way is a conventional truth. But the actual object, emptiness, is an ultimate truth. The fact that this glass has two entities, two natures, its conventional nature and its ultimate nature, it doesn't mean that if we just say the glass itself is a conventional truth. Its emptiness, the glass's emptiness, is an ultimate truth. We don't say the glass is an ultimate truth in general. Okay? So that'll become a little more clear when we talk about these things. So, yeah. What?
Could the Buddha have been a conventional truth and an ultimate truth?
Could the Buddha have been a conventional truth and an ultimate truth?
He appeared in a physical body, and people could see him at one time, yet.
So is the Buddha an ultimate truth? It depends on what, you know, you have to delve a little bit more. It gets a little bit tricky. Buddha, according to, let's say, Mahayana, has 4 bodies, right? One of them is called the nature body, the Svavavikakaya. That's the emptiness of the Buddha's mind, emptiness of the wisdom dharmakaya. So that is an ultimate truth. The wisdom dharmakaya is a conventional truth. The Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya are both conventional truths, conventional phenomena. So, but then you have to check whether that the Svavavikakaya can be called Buddha. Can you say that is, you know, Buddha is ultimate truth? Usually when we talk about Buddha, we say the Arya Buddha. What do I say? Pakpe Sangye, Sangye Pakpa, Pakpe Sangye. Means a person. So a person is a conventional phenomena. So usually when we talk about Buddha, we're not saying the ultimate nature. Every phenomena, conventional phenomena, has emptiness as its ultimate nature. But one, you know, we don't. If something is a conventional phenomena, it is not emptiness. If it is emptiness, it is not a conventional phenomena. We're just that's talking about from other tenets. So here we're just talking about for Sotrantika. We'll come back to that later. Okay, when we talk about prasangika. So the definition of an ultimate truth is, oh, this is good now. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty. A phenomenon that is able to perform a function ultimately. Ultimate truth, truly existent thing. What is thing? Ngopo, right? Bhava, I think in Sanskrit. Product, impermanent, compounded phenomena, substance, and specifically characterized phenomena are mutually inclusive. That means she's translating mutually exclusive. It just, the text literally says are the same meaning. They are synonymous. I'm not sure mutually inclusive is this, it means the same thing. In the text that was composed by Kuntrok Jigme Wangpo, I think previous incarnation of Jamyang Shepa, supposedly, or a later incarnation, I'm not sure which. He has objects are divided into 2 truths, into specifically characterized and generally characterized phenomena, into negative and positive phenomena. So on page 224, he says, the definition of an ultimate truth is, our definition was that which is ultimately able to perform a function, right? This is still for Sautrantika tenets. He says an ultimate truth is a phenomena that is able to bear reasoned analysis from the point of view of whether it has its own mode of subsistence without depending on imputation by terms or conceptual consciousness. So it's a different definition of ultimate truth. It's kind of getting at it from a slightly different point of view. Conventional truths are, for the Sautrantikas, are kind of intellectual constructs. So you could say, look at it from different point of views. Ultimate truths and conventional truths for them. Ultimate truths are things that are real, that can be perceived with the senses, that are able to perform a function, that don't have to depend upon conception to be perceived. Conventional truths for them, you know, just conventionally existent, not ultimately existent, are things that are conceived of by the mind and that don't have any substantial existence of their own. Some things are conceived of by the mind. Everything is conceived of by the mind, right? even conventional truths, but things that are exclusively objects of the mind, like, say, space, non-compounded space, and phenomena like that. They are permanent. They're not objects of the senses. They are just conventional truths. So things that are, for them, things that are permanent are conventional truths. It's a little bit different, quite a bit different than the Vaibhashikas. For the Vaibhashikas, many of the things that were permanent were what? They were ultimate truths, right? And for them, an ultimate truth was something which was, kind of, even if you analyzed in the final analysis, it was always there. It couldn't be broken down by analysis. You couldn't break it down into parts, like partless atoms and, space also. Uncompounded space was an ultimate truth for them. Here, uncompounded space is a conventional truth. So that's why it's very useful to train in this terminology, because at various times when you read in the sutras and you read in various texts, they're talking about conventional truth and ultimate truth. You have to sort of know the context, because they could be referring to something completely different. Here, the term that's used a lot in the Sotrantikas, I think introduced, maybe the Buddha talked about it especially also, but very famous in the prominent literature, are these terms specifically characterized and generally characterized phenomena. Sometimes those terms have a different meaning when we talk about the general characteristic and the specific characteristic. The general characteristic of this are phenomena that its characteristics that are shared with other things, like impermanence and being a product. Its specific characteristics are maybe being crystalline and this glass and so forth. Form has general characteristics, such as being impermanent and so forth. It has its own specific characteristics as being a visual form, being an object of eye consciousness. So sometimes the terms are used that way: specific characteristics or own characteristics, rangsen, rangitseni, and general characteristics. But here, when we talk about generally characterized phenomena and specifically characterized phenomena, it has a different meaning. Here, specifically characterized phenomena is a synonym, are phenomena which are synonymous with existent, with impermanent phenomena, with with ultimate truths. Ultimate truth, truly existent, thing, here it means functioning thing, product, impermanent, compounded phenomena, substance, and specifically characterized phenomena are mutually inclusive, or they're synonymous. So ultimate truths are things that are ultimately able to perform a function because they're things, they're functioning things. They are truly existent, whereas conventional truths are not truly existent. So here's another difference. For the Vaibhashikas, space also was truly existent, wasn't it? All phenomena that existed were truly existent. For the Sautrantikas, only phenomena that are ultimate truths are truly existent. Only things that perform a function are truly existent. Otherwise, they don't exist truly. They're kind of falsely existent. The definition of a conventional truth is a phenomenon that is not able to perform a function ultimately. This is according to the definition in Trukhi Gelson's text. Conventional truth, falsely existent, permanent phenomena. Notice that conventional truth is a synonym of permanent phenomena. Anything that's permanent is, for the Sautrantikas, a conventional truth. And generally characterized phenomena are synonymous. So generally characterized phenomena are phenomena that are only objects of mental consciousness, of conception. Say the mental image, the meaning generality, the word generality. When we talk, remember we used the word meaning generality when we talked about low rig? Do you remember, Don? what we call mental image was actually dunshi, meaning generality. So the fact that it's a, excuse me, a generality meant that it was a generally characterized phenomena. It was something that was permanent. So just in case your mind is getting too clogged up by this, let's take a short break and you can have some specifically characterized tea and biscuits.
Truly existed.
So Oma has a question now.
All of these different schools seemingly contradict each other, and if a person can become enlightened through all of them.
It's like, George, I can't get you because you're behind the pillar there.
I know, I'm smart on it.
So if you can't hear Oma's voice, she's saying if all of these, supposedly you can attain enlightenment through all these schools, you're saying, right?
Because they're all middle way.
What do you mean they're all middle way? They all propound themselves as being middle way.
Okay, they all
having the
propound-
middle way.
Yeah, they all propound themselves.
But
as
that
the
doesn't mean
middle
they
way.
are the middle way.
Well,
Okay.
they propound themselves.
First of all, we'd have to,
Okay.
definitely disagree with that, even the beginning premise here, that you could attain enlightenment through all of them, because the Hinayana tenets say that you don't, only some people, very, very few people can follow the Bodhisattva path. It's very, very rare people, and some people are not of that lineage, so that they could never become enlightened. Some people are not of the Mahayana lineage. It's some kind of karmic propensity that you have. So not all of them would say that you could become enlightened through following their tenets, first of all. Not everyone would agree to that. But at any rate, let's talk about arhatship. All of them say you could attain arhatship through following their tenets. Then what?
Okay, then I don't have a question.
So certainly the Hinayana tenets say that enlightenment is possible, but not everyone can attain enlightenment. It's only the rare individual that has that kind of karmic propensity. From the Mahayana point of view, everyone will eventually become enlightened. Some people, from the Hinayana point of view, some people who become arhats, as their mind stream ceases upon the attainment of nirvana without remainder, they know there's nothing else that they can attain after that. They can't enter the Mahayana path after that. From a Mahayana point of view, individuals who attain nirvana can be awakened by the Buddha. Their mind streams do not cease. They can be awakened by the Buddha later. So there's a big gulf between the Mahayana and Hinayana tenets. And those individuals can then enter into the Mahayana and become Buddhas.
Okay, but if you want to go for enlightenment, it just seems to me like you should know which ones advocate enlightenment and study those, and cut out the rest.
Cut to the chase.
Yeah, I mean, my
Okay.
time is short.
Right, this is good. You're quoting a T-shirt here, right?
I need to do those kinds of
Life is
things.
short,
Gotta
the
get
objects
into
of knowledge are infinite. Therefore, I should be like the stork who takes the milk out of the pond water and take the essence of this life, right?
But I don't
But in
know.
order to take the essence of this life, that's why we're doing this short study of the tenets. Because in order to understand the prasangika, the finest, subtlest view, we need to have some of these things seem very clear to us. Some of these lower tenets, they seem very eminently correct. And it's only, and at a certain point, we might have to stretch our mind to go to another tenet that is more subtle than that. Okay, so the definition of conventional truth is a phenomena that is not able to perform a function ultimately. Remember here, they're taking the definition of a little bit differently. Instead of saying that is not able to perform a function ultimately, here it says a conventional truth, or as it says, a truth for an obscured awareness, is a phenomena that only exists through being imputed by conceptual consciousness. That's basically a conventional truth. That is true. Both of these would hold if you were holding them as definitions. So conventional truths are things that are only imputed by consciousness, that are not able to perform a function ultimately for the Sautranticas. Here the text talked about the way that they were translating here. Did you listen to that? Truth for an obscured awareness? or truth for a concealing consciousness. This is another way of translating the same word that we translate as conventional truth. Samvriti satya. Samvriti satya is the Sanskrit term that people translate, all of the different tenets translate as conventional truth. Parama, what is it? Parama satya? Parama satya, I guess, is ultimate truth. I may be leaving out a syllable there. Parama something. Parama satya. So there are different ways of translating this word samvriti satya. Sometimes we just translate it as is here, as conventional truth. The Tibetans, though, translate it as kunsop dempa, kunsop. Kunsop means all concealing, or how did he translate it here? Truth for an obscured mind. Kunsop dempa. Dempa means truth, the satya. So there are three meanings of this term that are generally taken in the scriptures for samvriti. Sometimes it means just conventional, that which is conventional. Sometimes it means that which is obscured. So why are conventional truths called truths for an obscured mind? They're not really true. They're only true for an ignorant kind of consciousness that perceives them to be true. I think Jeffrey Hopkins, I mentioned this before, one lecture that he gave in Bodh Gaya many years ago, he called conventional truths, he translated it as truth for a jerk. That was quite nice. Truth for a jerk. It sounds like Queen for a day. Truth for a jerk.
Are they saying that all conceptions are mistaken?
Conventional, here, what we're talking about is conventional truth. The translation of samvriti satya. Sometimes we translate into English, even the Tibetan. The Tibetan generally translates samvriti satya as kunsop denpa. They translate samvriti as kunsop, from the subtlest meaning of it. But it doesn't always mean that. Truth for a concealing mind, all concealing truth. The sense of all concealing truth or truth for a concealing mind means something is true for ignorance, from the point of view of ignorance, grasping to true existence, but it is not really existing that way. From the meaning of truth from the highest tenet's point of view is that which exists the way that it appears. The mode of existence is in accord with the mode of appearance. So conventional truths from the highest point of view don't exist the way that they appear. They're only true for ignorance. They're not really true. So that's why they're called, Tibetans translate them as kunsop denpa. That's why the Prasangika says they're samvriti satya. That's why they're conventional truths. They're only true for that concealing mind. But so here, we can just take the general meaning of conventional truth.
What's the third one?
That which is terminological, I think.
From this perspective, the Sutrayana school, then, does the Buddha not have any conceptual consciousness?
From which point of view?
From the Sutra school's perspective.
Does the Buddha not have conceptual consciousness?
Because conceptual consciousness is basically considered obscured in the sense that it isn't a direct perception of something.
I think for the these Hinayana schools, the Buddha does have conceptual consciousness. For the Mahayana in general, I think the Buddha knows everything by direct perception, but I'm not absolutely certain of that. I'll check. Okay, let's go a little bit further here. So, again, existence are divided, if you divide existence, because that was the basic thing that we're talking about. Basically, you could talk about non-existence and existence as being some superclass. Basically, we're just talking about existence here, right? Existence are either conventional truths or ultimate truths. Another way of dividing existence is into negative phenomena and affirmative or positive phenomena. So the definition of a negative phenomenon is a phenomenon realized by means of eliminating its object of negation by the mind that apprehends it. So that's pretty simple, right? Actually, it's a very big topic, and it's mentioned a lot in the Buddhist scriptures, because there are certain phenomena which are realized by means of negating something else, such as emptiness and selflessness. Those are negative phenomena. So there's a big question about when we talk about negative phenomena. Again, you can divide the negative phenomena up into affirming negations and non-affirming negations, as is said next, right? There are two types of negatives: non-affirming negatives and affirming negatives. In Tibetan, we say megak and mayingak. Gakpa means negative, or it can also mean refuted, but here it means negative phenomena. Megak, mepa in Tibetan is a word that just means non-existent. So it means negatives in which something is not affirmed. You've just negated something. Mayingak are when you say it's not one thing, but kind of leaving open the possibility for it to be something else, or affirming something else. Those are called affirming negatives. Examples of the former, non-affirming negatives, are non-compounded space, true cessation, and emptiness. So for them, selflessness also, I think. Non-compounded space is the mere absence of obstructing contact. It doesn't affirm anything in its place. True cessations are cessations such that the phenomena will never arise again, and nothing else is implied in its place. Examples of the latter, that is affirming negatives, are the reverse of a non-thing. This is kind of a double reverse, right? We say bumpa mayimba lelokpa, means the reverse of a non-vase, the opposite of a non-vase, that actually is, although it's negating something, it's a negative phenomena, it is affirming something at the same time. What is it affirming? Vase, right? What is it negating?
Everything else.
Isn't it negating vase also? Because you have non-vase in there. Is both affirming and negating vase? Something to think about. Okay, and the appearance of the reverse of a non-pot. That is that. Remember, when we talked about, excuse me, when we talked about mental images or meaning generalities, we said that the meaning generality was the appearance. The meaning generality, or the mental image of a pot, was the appearance of the reverse of a non-pot, or the opposite of non-pot to conception. So those are examples of affirming negations here. There are other kinds of affirming negations, and you can, I think in this text and in Jeffrey Hopkins' text, there are more examples. Let's just take a look for a second here. Here we go. Negative and positive phenomena. On page 230. The definition of a negative phenomena is an object that is realized through the explicit elimination of an object of negation. Because objects of knowledge are being divided into negative and positive, negative here does not refer to the act of negation. It refers to an object that is the negative or absence of an object of negation. So negative phenomena can actually be perceived, right? It's not as though they don't have any kind of existence, that they're actually, they are perceived via negating something else. Right? For example, a negative object such as a non-cow is not the act of negation, nor either a statement of negation or what is negated. Non-cow is not what is being negated. Actually, what is being negated when you say non-cow? Cow is being negated, okay? Non-cow is known through explicitly eliminating cow, and thus is a negative phenomenon. Non-cow includes all phenomena other than cow, such as house, fence, person, and so forth. Although cow is not a non-cow, when one says or thinks cow, conceptuality does not need explicitly to eliminate non-cow, and thus cow is a positive phenomena. What was it saying there?
Never take directions from
Non-cow includes all phenomena other than cow, blah, 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 blah. Although cow is, how long is that parentheses? Okay, although cow is not non-cow, that is, it is true that a cow is the opposite of a non-cow. Still, cow itself is a positive phenomena. You don't have to perceive cow via that conceptual method. Cow itself is a positive phenomena. Negative object and exclusion of other are mutually inclusive. Negative object, that is negative phenomena, negation, and exclusion of other are mutually exclusive. I'm not sure if our text talks about exclusion of others. This is famous. Apoa means exclusion in the logical system of Dignaga and the Indian logicians. Here it's anya apoa, or shensel, means negation of other, or exclusion of other. And we won't talk about that right now. There are two types of negative phenomena, non-affirming negatives and affirming negatives. So here there's a little more detail. The definition of a non-affirming negative is an object realized by an awareness that explicitly realizes that negative object within the context of only eliminating its negated element. An example is Brahmins not drinking beer. The fact that Brahmins do not drink beer. Actually, to me, almost seems like a affirming negative, because if they don't drink beer, they have to drink something else, right? It's like here it says Brahmins not drinking beer. Brahmins do not drink beer. Then the statement that Brahmins should not drink beer, that's that's the commentary. The statement that Brahmins should not drink beer indicates a non-affirming negative because only the negated element, drinking beer, is eliminated, and no other type of food or drink is affirmed in its place. Though Brahmins, being humans, must drink something, Brahmins not drinking beer does not apply this in place of the negation of drinking beer. I have a question about that. Also, Brahmins, though existent, are not implied in place of the negation of the object of negation. Brahmins are the basis of the negation. So when we talk about negation, we have a basis and that which is to be negated upon that basis. Like, say, if we talk about true existence, the basis of negation is the cup or the self, say the conventionally existent self, and what is negated, the object of negation, that which is being negated, let's say, is true existence or truly existent self in the higher tenets. The definition of an affirming negative is a negative that implies some other phenomenon, whether positive phenomena or another affirming negative, or both, in place of the negation of its own negated element by the awareness that explicitly realizes it. An example is the fact that fat Devadatta does not eat food during the daytime. In this case, the negation of eating food during the daytime implies Devadatta, given his corpulence, eats at night. So my question is, what's the difference between that and the fact that Brahmins do not drink beer? What do you think, Venerable? Do you see any difference? So it's supposedly, I don't know what the reason, I can't.
They're implying that because he's fat,
yeah.
he must be eating.
Yeah.
But he may be.
But
fasting to death.
Brahmins,
It's
I think the
possible.
difference is that in the case of the Brahma-centric, where you're adding some more knowledge, they have to drink, because they're human. Right here, just the appearance that he's fat in itself
yeah.
stands alone,
But-
Couldn't he just be fat?
I suppose.
Yeah, and isn't it more reasonable to think?
So anyway,
that
there's some reason, but I don't know what it is. So maybe you keep your eyes open when you read things, or maybe you can ask some lamas sometime, unless you figure out the reason why that's one of them is some classical reason. So there are different kinds of, we talk about affirming negations and non-affirming negations. Affirming negations are of various types also, in which the object is the affirmation is made explicitly and sometimes implicitly, and that which is affirmed is itself another affirming negation, and so forth. So that's enough of that. Okay, because here our text just says there are two types of negatives: non-affirming negatives and affirming negatives. Examples of the former, that is, non-affirming negatives, are non-compounded space, true cessation, and emptiness. Examples of the latter are the reverse of non-thing and the appearance of the reverse of a non-pot to a conception apprehending it. So when we talk about selflessness in the Sautrantika, is it a negative or a positive phenomena? Negative phenomena? Why is that?
Well, because it's.
Do
the
negative
opposite.
phenomena have to be permanent?
No.
Okay, but it just so happens that selflessness is permanent. Okay, so why is it a negative phenomena?
Because it negates the, well, I guess you could arguably look at it either way, but my initial impression was that it negates the idea of self-fullness or self.
A certain kind of self, right?
Right.
It's negating a self, so it's apprehended or realized via the negation of something else, right? The explicit negation of something else. So is it an affirming negation or a non-affirming negation?
It's a non-affirming negation. It doesn't. Oh wow. Now we're into a world of mirrors. It doesn't affirm the existence of anything in its place, so it would be non-affirming.
Is that right? It doesn't affirm. Doesn't it affirm the existence of the conventional self?
Selflessness?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You're right.
Don't jump to conclusions. They're tricky.
I'm easily persuaded.
Yeah. I'm going to try to sell you some insurance after class. And I'll have a good deal for you. It's only $1 million, and you can pay me up front. And very good deal.
Selflessness affirms the idea.
Well, sometimes we might think that, like, for instance, when we talk about proof of selflessness in the higher tenets, when we talk about emptiness, and we talk about the king of reasonings, the self is empty because it's a dependent arising. The king of reasonings, dependent arising, kind of implies that seems like you might be affirming, while you're negating the phenomena, you're affirming its conventional existence because it's a dependent arising. But that's on another level. The actual negation is just the actual phenomena that's being realized, the emptiness, the selflessness, is just a non-affirming negation. But what about how is selflessness realized? Is it actually realized, that negative phenomena, is it actually realized with direct perception for Sautrantika?
No.
Why not? What do you think? Yeah. Can you have a direct realization of selflessness?
I don't know for Sautrantika, I would say no.
No. Okay. You can't have a direct realization of selflessness? They don't talk about emptiness so much. They're talking about selflessness. You say you can't. Yangshin says you.
Have a direct perception of impermanent phenomena, and selflessness is a permanent phenomena. So they indirectly.
You can't. Okay, you can't. There's a difference of terminology here. You can realize selflessness with direct perception. You realize it with direct perception, but not directly.
Why? It's conceptual.
Because as one part of what Diana is recalling, if with direct perception, the object that you're perceiving has to be what for Sotrantika? It has to be a conventional truth or an ultimate truth? It has to be an ultimate truth. It has to be a functioning thing. It has to be something that's impermanent. Emptiness is impermanent. So the appearing object, what you're realizing when you have a direct realization of selflessness, the appearing object of that realization is not selflessness. What's the appearing object? The impermanent aggregates. You're actually perceiving the aggregates as impermanent, and indirectly, that realization is it is a direct realization of that, and indirectly you are knowing thereby that they are empty of being, say, permanent, partless, and independent, or self-supporting, substantially existent. You actually realize a conventional phenomena, an impermanent phenomena, and indirectly you realize the selflessness of that. So you do have a direct realization of selflessness, but not directly. Right? Remember the terminology in Lati Rinpoche's book when he talked about the Sautrantika tenets. He said there's a difference between realizing with direct perception and realizing, say, directly with direct perception. So the direct perception is realizing the aggregates as empty, as impermanent. That's what it's realizing, that positive phenomena. But it's indirectly, it's realizing, sort of implicitly, it's knowing and is able to cognize afterwards that the person is empty of being self-supporting, substantially existent. So those are some of the other related things here. Again, if we were to divide existence, there are two divisions, single phenomena and different phenomena, or the single and the different. So here, this is kind of interesting because this comes up in the later when we analyze about emptiness. One or single, or identical, maybe we could say. Maybe we could say identical and different, or one and different. It's different in different contexts. Different words work better. Say, for instance,
Separate?
maybe different is a different word than separate, because when you define what different means, you could use the word separate in the definition, but the word different, tate, usually means different. Two things are. So if you talk about any two things, just in general, either they have to be the same or they have to be different. Would you agree? Could there be anything that's not same or different? Now you're jumping to conclusion? You think about that. Take any two things. Those two things either have to be one or the same, this chick, or they have to be different. Let's say carry and carry. Are they the same and or different? Same. How about Carrie? Do you have another nickname?
Gosh.
You don't want to reveal.
Seraphin.
Seraphin is your web name or something.
And which name?
Your witch name.
He's a
Which?
Oh, you're a witch. I didn't know that. I thought witches were only lady witches.
Nope.
Oh, excuse me.
So I guess I'm a boo witch or a Jew witch or something like that.
So you're a Jewish male witch. A boo, a Jew boo witch. Okay.
Could be my new last name.
So Seraphin. So are Seraphin and Carrie one or different? Those are two different things, eh?
Different but inclusive.
Different
Same
names,
base.
same
Different
person.
but
same
inclusive.
base, different label.
Same.
Same, but no, I'm just asking, are they the same or different?
Same.
They're the same? No, they're not the same. Because to be the same, they have to be both the same in entity and name. So they're not the same. Like when we say the examples that are given, like the Tibetan word for dog is ki, or the Kampas say chi, ki, and say. So although they're referring to the same entity when you say dog and ki, they're still, dog and ki are still different. They're not identical. They're not one. Okay? So if two things exist, they either have to be the same or different. So the reason that comes important later, very important, is when one of the famous arguments, one of the famous proofs of selflessness is when we refer to the self. If the self, let's say we talk about, now we're leaving Sautrantika again, Oma. I'm causing your mind to be stretched a bit. This is a little bit unusual to be mixing tenets like this, but just to show you where it's applied later. When we talk about the selflessness of the person, when we analyze, we first try to identify the object of negation, the self that seems to be here. We try to identify how it seems to be existing, as though it were truly existent, okay? If it were truly existent, it would have to be truly one with the aggregates or truly different from the aggregates. Do you remember that in the 4-point analysis in the Lam Rim? So the point of it is this. Two things. We have one thing we're trying to analyze, the self. And we're going to compare it with something else that seems to be related with it, the aggregates. This has got a bunch of parts, that's what it is. Maybe the tea and the milk are two aggregates, and the sugar, is there sugar in here? Yeah?
Yes.
3 aggregates. This is 4th aggregate, this is the 5th aggregate. Okay, there are 5 aggregates here. And the self. So first of all, we identify the sense of self. This is the false self. We're trying to, the object to be negated. In meditation, we identify that. Then we need a logical reasoning to prove that it doesn't exist. Here's an introduction now to one of the very powerful logical reasonings. If that self existed, no, we won't use first of all truly existent. If the self exists, it has to be either one with the aggregates or different than the aggregates. Is that true? Yeah, we just saw. If two phenomena exist, they have to be either one or different. So if the self, is the self identical, one with the aggregates, or is it different from the aggregates? Now that statement, without adding the word truly existent, will get you into trouble, because the self is different than the aggregates, conventionally. Okay, the aggregates are not the self. But if you talk about truly existent, the sense of the true existence of the self, that's where the argument, you have to first, in the first stage of meditating on emptiness, you first have to identify the object of negation, how it seems to be truly existent, really there, not just imputed. like having some real findable existence from its own side. If it were truly existent, it would have to be truly one with the aggregates or truly different from the aggregates. That step, the first step was called identifying the object of negation. First, in meditation, actually, not just with theory, actually experiencing how the I appears to your consciousness, okay? The second step is then establishing the pervasion. If the I were truly existent, it would have to be either truly one with the aggregates or truly different from the aggregates, right? This is related to this kind of topic here. Then the last two steps, it said that the meditators who do this, it might take them years to identify the object of negation. Then to establish the pervasion might take some short amount of time. And then the last two steps might take, a couple of minutes. The last two steps are showing that it cannot be truly one with the aggregates, that's absurd, that there are logical fallacies there. And it cannot be truly different from the aggregates. If it were truly one with the aggregates, what would be the fallacy there? Well, as the aggregates are a multiplicity, there would either have to be many aggregates, many selves, which we know there is only, we only conceive of one self, or if you don't assume the multiplicity of the aggregates, there would have to be one aggregate. Yeah. If the self were if the truly existent self were one with the aggregates. So you can first of all analyze that. There are a lot of different fallacies that arise from that. You can check in the various, when you study about emptiness, maybe with this introduction, if you go back and look at the 4-point analysis, you can start to see some more depth. The other possibility is that the self is truly different from the aggregates. It is conventionally different from the aggregates because it's just merely the self that does exist is just imputed on the aggregates. But this sense of a truly existent self, if it were truly different from the aggregates, it would have no relationship with the aggregates whatsoever. That is, if you cut yourself, you wouldn't say, if you cut the body, you wouldn't say, oh, I cut myself. So there are many fallacies there. So anyway, that's just some connection why this presentation of one and different, or single and different, is important when we talk about the analysis of emptiness. So it says single phenomena, or the single, can be divided into false singles and true singles. So false singles are things like dorje, because actually it's a couple, right? I'm not single right now, right? I'm joking. It just appears single to the girls who look at him. It's my bad joke, okay. So false singles doesn't mean that, right? False single, when we talk about single phenomena, things that are one, those that are false means not truly existent, right? False phenomena. Remember, falsely existent was the opposite of truly existent. So what are truly existent singles? Things that are one thing that exist ultimately, right? That are impermanent. The cup, Leo. False singles are, what are examples of false singles?
The concept of a cup. I want to buy that cup as opposed to I need to buy a cup.
I'm not sure why you want to buy this cup. This is my cup. I'm not sure about that. Let's say, how about, what is something which is false, a false phenomena? Space? Remember when we talked about truly existent? False phenomena were the conventionally existent for the Sotrantika, all the things that are merely imputed by the mind, that have no substantial existence, right? False phenomena. So what does it say here?
Are you talking about
So it's a little complicated here.
Truths.
Yeah, conventional truths for the Sautrantikas are false. But here it gives the example. It gives a little complicated. It says single phenomena can be divided into false singles and true singles. Knowable objects in general and generally characterized phenomena are examples of false singles. Thing and impermanent phenomena are examples of true singles. So you might say, what? Where did that come from? Knowable objects, isn't knowable object? Yeah, aren't they conventional things? I mean, aren't they ultimate things? Venerable, you say yes?
No, I said that's what when it says that, that's what it sounds like.
Noble object, no,
Well,
here it says they are
singles
false
and
singles.
noble objects.
Noble objects are false?
No, but then they say true, what did you say, true singles exist ultimately impermanent in thing? Did you just say that?
So what's the crux of this thing? In logic, especially in the Sautrantika, if you have a group, if you have a set of things, like say for instance, knowable phenomena. Knowable phenomena was that superclass, right, which is existence. Existence are either what? Impermanent or impermanent. They're either conventional or ultimate, right? So knowable objects is a set that includes both permanent and impermanent things, both ultimate and conventional things. In general, the convention is that if you have a set of both permanent and impermanent things, you would say the set itself is permanent. Or let's say in this case, conventional is a conventional truth. So the thing, knowable objects, because it's comprised of both permanent and impermanent things, permanence takes precedence, and so it's considered, knowable objects are considered to be permanent, because it includes some permanent things. Could be, you could make the argument that it should be the other way around, but this is how that it is defined. The same way generally characterized phenomena, that's a synonym. Generally characterized phenomena, is that a synonym of knowable object? Mindro? No. What is generally characterized phenomena? That's a conventional truth, it's permanent. So that's one subset, but that itself is permanent and false. So therefore, that one thing, that single thing, is a false single. The thing about knowable objects being a false single, that's false because part of it is false. Amongst knowable objects, there are some things that are so-called falsities, that is conventionalities, that is permanent phenomena. Does that make sense? Carrie? Can you grok that with your witch mind? It's nice to know that you are a witch. I didn't know that. Is it the same as Wicca? Wicca. You know about that also. Wicca? Okay.
Going back to my tortured one, that glass as opposed to getting a glass is a generally characterized phenomenon, isn't it?
A glass. You mean the concept of glass.
The concept of glass.
The meaning generality of glass.
Yes.
The generality glass, okay, the generality of glass, is that a conventional truth or an ultimate truth? What do you think? Conventional truth? Generality of glass. What does that mean? It's a conventional truth. It means it's permanent? No, I'm not talking about the meaning generality. I'm just talking about the generality glass.
Right. It's permanent.
It's permanent. Why is it permanent?
It's unchanging. It's imputed by the mind. It's not,
In logic, there is some argument like this. So generality, that's why the word meaning generality comes about when we talk about the mental image. We talk about certain classes. We talk about generalities and particulars. And this whole concept of generalities and particulars spawned a whole part of logic, both Indian and Buddhist logic. So whether generalities were real things or not. So Leo's got some insight into this, and obviously you're thinking about this. From the philosophical point of view, the Buddhists, the Buddhist logicians, at least the Gelugpa presentation of it, because you have to check the other schools, maybe they have slightly different, when they interpret what Dharmakirti was saying, it seems that Dharmakirti was saying that generalities are just they are constructs. You can't find the generality cup. Although this is an instance of the generality, when we talk about generalities and particulars, all of the things that we actually perceive are, with our senses, are particularities. They are particulars or particularities of generalities, right? Let's say this is a particular kind of glass. This is a particular kind of mug or cup. This is a particular watch. So when I'm perceiving this, I do perceive watch, but not the generality watch, because this is a particularity of watch. So there is if you're interested, there are a couple of texts on the Sautrantika tenets, and that you can read. I remember Bonnie, who was doing one of our courses before, remember she was so interested, she read those two texts on Sautrantika. She actually did a book report. I think she's a teacher, right? She actually gave me a book report, having read one of the books, which I thought was very nice. So you can investigate this if you want, like Leo, if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about the kind of the origin of this, all of this terminology, generality in particular. There are a couple of books that I can lend anyone who's interested. So anyway, that's why here this, what seems to be strange thing, knowable objects, is a false single. Knowable object is that, it shouldn't be plural. Knowable object, that category, that generality, is a false single. Thing, that is also a generality, isn't it?
I think knowable objects in plural is a generality, but an object or a thing is
well, here it's a generally characterized phenomenon, knowable objects.
yes.
Venerable Sangikando put in general, that means the generality, sheja. But nobo, the thing, is also a generality, right?
No, that's
No, this it's not talking about, you show me thing.
oh, I'm sorry.
Show me
Yes,
thing.
right.
Where's thing? This is a thing. This is a particular of thing. But thing is a generality that includes all of those. But when you have a generality that all of its particulars are impermanent, then the generality is said to be impermanent, even though generality in general is permanent. So thing and impermanent phenomena are example of true singles. Okay, here let's see what in this text. There's some different presentation here. Where was this? 235. Good going. Okay, so the single and the different. The definition of a single is a phenomena that is not diverse. So in the Dura text, when we study collected topics, which was like one of the first subjects that one studies in the monastic education, there is actually definition of single and different. Diverse, or sosowa, means that which is, what does she call here? Diverse, right? Is not diverse. So it is not, it is not differentiable as different things. An example is a pot. That's a single. The definition of the different is those phenomena that are diverse phenomena. For example, a pillar and a pot. the famous example. In fact, here, when we talk about different phenomena, can be divided into false difference and true difference. The two, a pot's double reverse, really means the isolate of a pot. That means the opposite of a non-pot. And a pillar's double reverse, or isolate of a pillar, are example of false difference. You're talking about you're comparing two permanent phenomena. Let's say the isolate of pillar and the isolate of pot. Those are false difference because they're both false. Pillar and pot are said to be true difference because they're both true phenomena. They are ultimately existent. They are impermanent phenomena.
So when they say double reverse, they're referring to the general notion, a generic pot, as opposed to a specific pot. The generality pot is related with this double reverse, but it may not be exactly the same. This is something you can investigate in the text. If you talk about the generality of pot, here when we talk about what she says double reverse, the Tibetan is dokpa, which generally means reverse, but it implies a particular kind of concept here, which is like this thing when we talked about earlier, the exclusion of other. It is, let's say it is, if we say the isolate, that's another way that the philosophers have begun to translate this term now in English. Have you seen some of their isolate? I can't remember how John Donne, he had some nice translation also. So let's say the isolate of pot is the opposite of a non-pot, which is what we were talking about before, the bumpa mayimpa le lokpa. That is the dokpa of pot. But one has to investigate it more clearly. It's a conceptual kind of understanding. That is not, that itself localizes to, let's say, in general, that can localize to or isolate an individual pot that isn't necessarily the generality pot. So anyway, something to think about. It's more subtle than that, I think. So let me just read what it says here, and then we'll take a break for lunch, I think. Huh? How are we doing, Georgie? 2 minutes? Is that high five or is that 5 minutes? Okay. Both. An example of a different is pillar and pot. Here it doesn't talk about false and true. The single is that which appears as single to a conceptual consciousness. This here we call single. That's where we call it single also here, one, or unity. For example, a pot is single. Also, pot and pot are single. They're one, they're identical, because the term is the same and the meaning is the same. That which is different, the different, are what appear to conceptual consciousness to be different. Pillar and pot are obviously different from the point of view of both terms and their meanings. However, dog and its Tibetan equivalent ki are different even though their meaning is the same, because the terms themselves are different. Remember we talked about that a couple of minutes ago? The mention of dog does not necessarily evoke ki for a conceptual consciousness, ki being the Tibetan word for dog. Or, as I said, Kampas would say chi. Therefore, the two are different, but not different entities. So two things can be different, but not different entities. Like, say, for instance, impermanence and product. Are they synonymous? They're synonymous, right? You have to think. No, they're all there. They're all, everyone says they're synonymous. They're synonymous, but they are not, they are one entity. You cannot find something which is a product which is not impermanent. And you cannot find something which is
which is impermanent, which is not a product. If it is a product, it is impermanent. If it is impermanent, it is a product. You have eight pervasions. They are the same, they are one entity, but they are still different because they arise conceptually different to conception. That's why you can use that synonym of impermanence as a proof of impermanence. You say sound, remember we talked sometimes, sound is impermanent because it's a product. You can actually realize that sound is a product before you realize that sound is impermanent, even though they're one entity. Why? Because they're conceptually different. Does that make sense? And so that is one of the classic proofs that we often use in the text to prove that sound is impermanent. You can realize that sound arises as a product because you can watch someone making sound, and it arises as a product of causes and conditions. It is produced. Okay? So, pillar and pot are obviously blah, 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 blah. Okay. Similarly, product and impermanent thing are mutually inclusive. They are synonymous. Whatever is one is the other, but they are different. Dog and pot are different and mutually exclusive. That is, they're not synonymous, right? Because there is no one thing that is both a pot and a dog. There's a classic example about, you know the definition of a pot? That which has a fat belly, a flat base, and is able to hold water. Some they say that's the definition of a geshe. I'm joking. Okay. So, you might say, well, you might say geshe and pot are different, but then someone says, oh, no, but they're not mutually, there's not, anyway, joking. However, dog and pot are not a dichotomy. Is that right? Not all phenomena can be divided into those two categories. That is, they are not a set that includes all phenomena. Because if something is not a pot, it is not necessarily a dog, obviously. Permanent phenomenon and impermanent phenomenon are a dichotomy, because if something exists, it must be either one or the other. How could it be a dichotomy? Aren't there some things, what about non-existence? They are not impermanent or impermanent. Well, here dichotomy only covers the class of existence. If something is existent, you can divide it different ways. Remember, like dividing the pie? Divide it so there's a clear demarcation. So if something is impermanent, if something is existent, it has to be either impermanent or impermanent. If two things exist, they either have to be one or different. They either have to be single or, identical or different. Product and pot are different. Product and pot are different, right? Are not mutually inclusive. Are they mutually inclusive? Doesn't a pot have to be a product? So they are mutually inclusive. No, products don't have to be, this is mutually inclusive. Products don't have to be pots. Pots have to be products, but products don't have to be pot. So product and pot are different. They are not mutually inclusive. Whatever is one is not necessarily the other. They are not mutually exclusive. What would that mean, mutually exclusive? That they cannot be, if it is one, it is not the other. Because what? Because something such as a copper pot can be both a product and a pot, and they are not a dichotomy. So here's some things to think about. The mutually inclusive, or synonymous, are always the same entity, but they are different within the sameness of entity. Mutually exclusive phenomena, such as table and its color, can be the same entity, but different within the sameness of entity. Let's stop there, take a break. What do you think? Is it about time? So there should be some lunch waiting for us, and then let's do a very short dedication now, and we'll do a longer dedication at the end of the next session. So you know the prayer that we say, Gewa Di means due to these merits, by these merits, or as a result of these merits. I'm sorry, this virtue. Gewa means virtuous karma. Gewa Di Nyurdu. Nyurdu means quickly. Dak means I. Lama Sange Drubgyurne means having achieved the state of a guru Buddha. Lama Sange Drubgyurne. Droa means migrators. Chikyang means not even one. Excluding even one. Malupa. Was it Gewadi Nyurdudag Lama Sange Drubgyurne Droa Chikyang Malupa Dei Sala Kopa Shok. May I place them in that very state. So see if you can dedicate your merits this way. Gewadi Nyurdudag Lama Sange Drubgyurne Droa Chikyang Malupa Dei Sala Kupa Shu